So as a result of that fasten your seatbelts comment, I'll just say you are about to take a little ride through my mind, my heart and my work, so it might be a little bit of a trip. So this is a photo of my mother and I. I grew up in South Africa through the 1970s and 80s, and a South Africa under apartheid and sanctions from the West. It was a very insular country. The music of the Beatles was banned, and even ABBA was considered a bit too racy. Television wasn't introduced until 1976, and even then it was only on for a few hours a day, and most of the content was locally produced. So, look, without the magic box, most of our recreation and entertainment occurred in the bush. If we wanted to go for a weekend recreation, we'd go to a nearby national park or nature park to visit whatever animals we currently had a crush on. My enduring crush has always been the warthog. What's not to love about these little cuties? So even as kids in our own backyard, we learned to avoid mambas, cobras and deadly worm slums. When my family and I moved to Australia in the late 1980s, it amazed me that Australians would spend a lot of money to go to a zoo to visit African wildlife, but not go to a local nature park to visit Australian wildlife. Australian wildlife to me had some fascinating biological design features, such as marsupial mums who could control the growth rate of their young by sending hormonal signals in their milk. That way, young are only ever ready to leave the pouch when environmental conditions are optimal for survival. No other animal that I know of can control the rate of growth of their young and put them into a state of suspended animation. And as a mother now of 2 children who decided not to sleep between the ages of about 0 and 5, and there's one culprit in the audience here, I still scratch my head as to why research dollars aren't put into this field to save the sanity of human parents everywhere. So now I've travelled far and wide and I've thought about the relationship of people and wildlife. And it perplexes me that when you speak to people and ask them to their face, most people will tell you how much they love animals. But if that is really the case, why are we seeing plummeting population levels of wildlife all around the world and an extinction crisis? How can humans save the animals we say we love? Now I think I've found the answer, but I'm not actually going to tell you what it is right now. So first I want to talk a bit more about animals. So in your mind's eye, I'd like you all to picture an animal. Does it have fur, feathers, scales, or skin? Does it have 2 legs, 4 legs, no legs, flippers? Does it have pointy little ears, droopy ears, no ears? Did any of you picture an animal like one of these? Oops. There we go. Okay, so now I'd like to ask you all again to think about where the closest animal is to where you are sitting right now. So a little earthworm under the concrete pad of this floor, maybe a kite circling high above our heads in the sky. Did any of you picture an animal like this? Oh. Uh-oh. So I think the animal on the left might be critically endangered by the animal on the right after this talk. Most humans never think of themselves as animals, or if they do, it's rarely. And when we refer to ourselves as animals, it's usually in a derogatory sense. We say things like, you're a greedy pig, a scaredy cat, you're a chicken. Humans set themselves apart from other animals on the basis of 3 general criteria. And the first is our superior intelligence. The second is our ability to communicate complex speech patterns with our vocal cords. And the third is that we hold ourselves erect. Most people only think of themselves as being an animal a handful of times in their lives. And usually this epiphany occurs when we're young and before we've set our species' prejudices. Do you remember when you realised you were also an animal? Have you ever thought about that? For me, when I first realised I was also an animal, I was at school. I can't remember what led to it, but the realisation that I was 96% genetically linked to a chimpanzee both shocked and amazed me. On one hand, I was like, wow, I can also be a chimpanzee, and bounced around the classroom. And on the other, I was like, hey, I'm not a dumb animal. So like most people experiencing cognitive dissonance, I took that freaky feeling and I tucked it away in the back of my brain because I wanted to be one of us, not one of them. But humans are animals, and we shouldn't be shaking those freaky feelings off. Now, I believe that we are different from other animals, not because of our intelligence, not because we use vocal cords to communicate, and not because we hold ourselves erect. I believe we're different from other animals because we have free will. We have the free will to choose not just to be our biologically programmed human selves, but to be humane. So what does it mean to be humane? The consensus is that to be humane means to be caring, compassionate, considerate and kind to other human beings and to other animals. Now I'll shift gears here for a moment before we talk about being humane and look at that difference, that real difference between human free will and other animals. And because I'm the director of a wildlife park, I get to shamelessly exploit the story of one of our staff members to illustrate some points. So this is Nellie. Nellie is a teenage sugar glider. She was brought to us after being pulled from the mouth of someone's pet cat. When she first arrived at the wildlife park, you'll see it clearly in this photo, both her hind legs and tail were completely paralysed. At first we thought her spine had been broken and she'd have to be euthanised. But under X-ray we could see her spinal column was just severely bruised and that there was a chance with time she would regain functionality. So our wonderful zookeepers and vet kicked into gear and took fantastic care of Nellie, as they do with all our animals, and she continues to improve day by day. Because she can't be released back into the wild because of her injury, she'll live out her life with us at the wildlife park now, helping to educate, entertain and inspire our visitors. But why am I telling you this story? Nellie lived on a rural property not too far away from here. She would have been living with her family in a hollow tree. And like all animals, Nellie and her family needed access to three fundamentals to living. The first, of course, is food. The second is security, and by that I mean appropriate habitat and somewhere to live that's protected from the elements and predators. And the third is the ability to reproduce. As humans, we can effortlessly exercise our free will to access these three fundamentals to living. If we want food, for example, we can rely on a system of industrial agriculture that delivers to us usually neatly packaged products that we can collect in convenient locations like supermarkets, produce markets or restaurants. Now we can even just order stuff online and have it delivered to our house. Animals, of course, can't do this. Pet animals rely on humans for their food, and wild animals get the raw end of the deal and have to forage or hunt for food on their own. What happens when humans clear the bush to build their homes and gardens? Well, one of the first things that happen is those native animals, the original inhabitants, lose their food supply. What about the second point then, the security? As humans, we can and do change our environment. I don't know, I hope most of you have watched that great South African movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy. In that movie, the narrator makes the point that animals adapt to the environment to survive, whereas humans adapt the environment to suit themselves. We can see the hand of humans everywhere on this planet now. We've changed landscapes, waterways, oceans. We're changing the climate. Quite a feat, really, but maybe not an admirable feat. So humans can and do change the environment, and when we restructure the environment, we all too often forget about those animals that don't have the same choices and can't change the environment back to something that suits them. Now, what about the ability to reproduce? We don't have to talk too much about human free will in this regard, perhaps. For the most part, we can choose who to reproduce with, how many offspring to reproduce. We can choose to just engage in lots of reproductive activities in real life or online, or we can choose not to do any of that stuff. Animals, of course, can't do this. But when humans affect habitat, security, we affect an animal's ability to reproduce, and of course it follows that we see what's happening all around us, and that's plummeting population levels of wildlife and an extinction crisis across the globe. And that is also happening here, right now, in our own backyard. My team at the wildlife park have already had some frights. we've already thought we're too late to try and save some species. And for me, that poses an enormous moral dilemma. But even if the moral side of things isn't an issue for you, the verdict is in, the research has been done. For example, Will Steffen from the Australian National University has recently led a series of research that has found that of the 9 processes that underpin all life on Earth, 4 have already exceeded safe levels. Climate change, as you can see, is only one of these processes. Scary darts. There is some good news, however. We've started to assign economic, social and psychological values to nature. We have the concept of natural capital. We've scientifically linked the positive effects of nature-based experiences and wildlife interactions with increased healing after illness, reduced stress, and positive primary health outcomes across the board. We've established the fields of conservation psychology, ecotherapy, and more doctors are prescribing what they call green prescriptions for their patients instead of drugs. But I know some of you are still sitting here, and I do know it because I've seen some of your faces, thinking it's too huge, it's too hard, it's too complicated to change. But I really don't think it is. I think it's simple. It's quite subtle, but it's very profound. And this is my idea worth sharing. I think that to save ourselves and to save animals, we need to be humane. We need to pass every decision we make, every action we take, through a filter of, is it compassionate? Is it caring? Is it kind? If we do this, how do things start to change? Well, for example, if I think about what I'm going to have for dinner tonight, if I'm thinking humanely rather than following my just human programmed self to eat, what sort of decisions will I make? Will I purchase products that I know come from countries that exploit slave or child labour? Will I buy food that I know has been grown using bee-killing pesticides or soil-destroying synthetic fertilisers? Will I support a system of animal agriculture that pollutes the earth, contributes more emissions to climate change than the burning of fossil fuels, and is cruel to animals? No, I'll start to make very, very different decisions about what I eat. Now, another little example, I want to re-landscape my garden, pull out those revolting ixoras and palm trees. This is a true story. In my little slice of urban habitat, I know there's a multitude of critters that make my garden their home. There's insects, birds, reptiles, small mammals. If I'm going to change my little environment, what can I do to ensure that all of those animals still have access to food, security, and the ability to reproduce? Now, if we come back to those 3 criteria that I said usually set humans apart from other animals, if we think humanely about those, do they still hold? If I take myself out of my human self and into my humane self, do I still think I'm more intelligent than other animals? If I think about a turtle that hatches from a beach, spends 30 years out at sea, finds its way back to that same beach to lay its eggs, with no maps, no GPS, no other references to guide its way. What about a dog that finds its way across an entire continent to find its family after it's been left behind? Again, with no maps, no GPS, no FaceTime, no ability to ask passers-by for directions. If I think humanely about intelligence, I realise that my human hardwired brain can't comprehend all of the types of intelligence that is out there in other animals. And what about communication? My humane self can't fathom how a whale can send messages at frequencies so low they can travel for up to 15,000 kilometres at some levels. Or bees that can communicate complex directions about where flowers are blooming just by wiggling their butts. Or dogs that can predict epileptic seizures in people. Again, there's a lot to communication that is not about vocal cords. And the last one, posture. Well, animals come in all shapes and sizes, as do humans. There are some countries around the world now considering some animals as non-human persons, based on those animals' ability to exhibit intelligence and an experience of emotion that is similar to humans. In 2013, India declared whales and dolphins as non-human persons legally. And there's a court case underway in the United States now to do the same for chimpanzees. In Ecuador, the country's constitution recognises that all life has the right to exist, persist, maintain and regenerate, and that Ecuadorians have the right to enforce those rights on behalf of ecosystems. So I'll leave you with this. If you love nature, if you love animals, if you love our wildlife, if you love yourselves, if you love your family, and if you believe that all life has a right to exist, persist, maintain and regenerate, you need to be humane. You need to practice your humaneness in every decision you make, every action you take, every single day. You didn't choose to be a human being, but you can choose to be a humane being. Thank you.